Good evening, I'm Kevin Schuker and this is QUEST.TV, and this evening we were supposed to be coming to you from Gravity East in the East Village, but due to technical problems we've been having all day, we find ourselves here thanks to Christopher at Live Live, and we're here in the back room here, and we're going to be putting out our response here to the 2020 show that was aired on September the 5th. I don't know how many of you actually saw the show, but if you're watching this as a download, what we recommend you do is you could stop the show right now, go back, watch the 2020 show. The links are up on the webpage, and then you can return to this broadcast, and then you'll be able to see exactly what we're talking about here. Because that show, especially for us people who are in the raw food movement, it was quite insulting to us, and especially to one of what we consider the father, or I could perhaps even say grandfather, of the raw food movement. Viktoras Kulvinskas was treated so poorly in this show that we feel we have to make a rebuttal and show how we feel within the community. Now, this evening I have a guest. She's sitting beside me right now, Donna Peroni, and Donna was featured on the show 2020, and when there was a raw food group meeting, she's going to be here, and she's going to be telling us her experience and how she came to be part of the show and what happened during the taping of that portion of the show, because I believe they filmed over 3 hours and yet they only used about 30 seconds. So Donna's going to tell us what happened in the other 3 hours, and we're going to see why perhaps they didn't put any of that in the show. Now, from my perspective, I'm an editor and QUEST.TV. I looked at this show in a lot of detail, and there's a few things that you can look at when you watch this show. The first thing is the people that are guests on the show. The first one being John Rigatini, and having seen what he has to say on the show, he has also posted a response on YouTube. The link is on our show, on our webpage, sorry, and you will be able to see his response. But to praise his words, I would say that he starts off by saying that this orthorexia, as it is termed, is not a raw food problem. It is an eating disorder, and it's nothing to do with raw foods. And he openly says that very quickly in his broadcast. He then goes on to describe more how it is an eating disorder that encompasses all types of food groups. Then when we look at the second guest, who's called Charlotte Anderson, you can go to her page, you'll see that she's actually Charlotte Hilton Anderson, and if you read her blog, you'll see that she's has a zany sense of humor and is quite a character. But what we found most interesting was, if you go through the show at a slow rate, frame by frame, when she's talking, it shows her dietary menus, and on there you see flash up on the screen, but only for a second, the words chicken and tuna and skim milk and yogurt. And these are things that we wouldn't normally associate with a raw food lifestyle, and yet they juxtaposition that information and then lead her into us believing that she is somewhat a raw foodist. And then the third guest on the show, Kate Finn, who unfortunately died in hospital as a result of malnutrition. Her webpage is also linked through our site, and you'll be, even though we can't read her book or the diary that was mentioned in the show, we can read her blog that she was creating up until 1998. And in there it very well describes that she was somewhat of a yo-yo dieter, if you will. She would go into health foods for a short period, and then she would come back out of healthy foods, And her diary makes very interesting reading. At the times when she was working with raw foods and working with a healthy diet, she says that she was putting on weight at that time up until 1998. Unfortunately, we don't have any information as to what happened after that, but we do see when it was mentioned in her diary where was the name Victor Kovinskas, one of many diet gurus. And other books are mentioned, like the Zone Diet and other authors that are written out there. So we're not really sure what her diet was that she was eating at that time. But Victor's name was supposedly in her diary. Well, recently we were out at the Hamptons with David Wolfe, and he was explaining to us how he believed that himself and also Gabriel Cousins were contacted to participate in this show, but due to the subject matter or just the feeling they had, they did not wish to participate. And I guess in the end they found Kovinskas and really treated Victor very poorly on the show and didn't really show him to his best light. They show excerpts from his talk at the New Life Expo, and again, if you go to our website, we actually have that lecture that he gave that was featured there. Not only was ABC there, but QUEST.TV was there, and we captured that. And if you want to hear what Victor Kovinskas really has to say, I recommend you go and look at that lecture. It's 45 minutes, and it's perhaps Victor's at his most best, and we recommend it. And it will give you perhaps a better balanced viewpoint as to the perspective of Victor Kovinskas and how his information and the pressure put upon him during this interview really did not allow him to express what he really is here sharing with us and the rest of the world. And I believe Donna has a little bit of more information she's going to give us as to how Victor became to be interviewed on this show. So I just wanted to give you just a little things to look for while you're watching the show. So you're going to be looking for the menu. And the other thing, as an editor, I noticed, and you'll sort of like pick this up as you go along, is that whenever they show anything to do with raw food, whether it's a book or a personality, listen to the words that are being said by the narrator at those times. They're always using words like extreme, or what was the other one I picked up? Aversion. So there was a very strong, almost subliminal or manipulation of a message here, taking something that is a serious eating disorder and somehow connecting that to the raw food movement, whose only goal is to educate people into leading a healthier way. I think the biggest and the strangest part of it was for me when they were saying, even at the end, I think it's Anderson. She says that how she was tired all the time and feeling so unhealthy. Finishes with saying, none of us gets to pick how we die, we only get to pick how we live, and I wasn't living. And then earlier, Stossel, he also says how when he's discussing Victorious's diet, the raw food diet, could it be that these people are dumb and just go for food fads? And he nods at Victorious, like yours. Well, it's very one-sided, because we saw from the menu plan from Catherine Anderson that it wasn't just a raw food diet that these guests were eating. Catherine Anderson was eating tuna and chicken, and yet there was no representative of the tuna or chicken industry that could have been possibly contributing to what was going on in her life. Another point they brought out is how people are eating more meat these days and living longer, and yet if they were to go into any hospital, and I recommend anybody go volunteer, go into a hospital, go into a nursing home and see the effects of eating animal products, and see the people who've had heart attacks and strokes, see the people who can't talk and can't walk, as a result of eating these foods that have clogged up their bodies. So before these people are brave enough to make statements that could affect us all, perhaps they should see the consequences of the results of the diet that they seem to be very happy to accept. So I just wanted to give you a few little things to look for while you're watching the show, and hopefully you can begin to look at it in a new light. This is not a show, really, I feel, about raw food. This is a show about eating disorders. They just chose to have a slant on the show that allowed the viewer to believe that raw foodists in some way were extreme and damaging to their health. And we want to absolutely refute that, and we want to say that we believe that the raw food diet is not only the healthiest diet, but it is a diet that can help our physical bodies and the planet, and we can move together in a much more sharing and loving cooperative relationship. So I guess that's my little speech here for my opinions on the show. Sitting right next to me, I have Donna Peroni, and I'm going to step out a little bit here, and I'm going to bring Eric in, because Eric Choker, also from QUEST.TV, Eric's behind the camera at the moment, he was also an invited guest on the show, and if you look at the brief footage, right, Donna?
1 second.
the brief footage they showed of this gathering, you'll see, Eric is there. So Eric will come and share his experience, because we'd all like to know, Donna, exactly how did you get involved in this project? What do you know about this project? And how do you feel the result of this project came out compared to what you thought were your expectations?
I was approached by Bonobo's restaurant when I hosted Victoria's Kavinskis for my Accent on Wellness Raw Foods group here in New York City. ABC News 2020 wanted to film Victoria's talk. So I got permission, and so a producer showed up, I'll leave him nameless, and they filmed the entire lecture. Afterwards, they interviewed Victorious, asked him some questions, and I spoke to his business partner because I had some concern about what they might be doing with this footage. And the thought was that any publicity is good publicity, because a lot of people have no idea about this raw foods lifestyle, and this was an opportunity just that people would be aware that it even exists. So with that in mind, a producer asked me if he could call me, because he knew nothing about this lifestyle and he was completely clueless, and here he had to create this segment. And he told me that basically the segment was that the whole show actually would feature very extreme lifestyles and how people obsess over them, or how become obsessive. So he did admit that the piece on raw foods, that one segment out of the whole, would be on the negative side. It would definitely be slanted towards the negative side, but he assured me that they would show a positive view of the raw foods lifestyle. So with that in mind, and then seeing that Victorious was on board, I thought, hey, here's my opportunity. I can maybe try to introduce this producer to some really positive people that he can interview, as well as maybe I could bring in some positive view. I could do that. So I did speak to him on the phone several times, and I educated him a bit, and I did tell him you should call David Wolf, you should call Gabriel Cousins, because I knew they would be great examples and very credible. And I think they refused to be on because they picked up that there was some negative slant to this thing. And then in my conversations with the producer, then he revealed that they were doing a piece on eating disorders. But I had the impression that this was a separate piece, that it wasn't the piece on raw foods, and that it was two separate things. So I didn't seem to worry too much about that. And he asked me, what's going on? What events are you having coming up? And I said, I'm featuring a discussion group on raw foods, and we gather and we talk about the lifestyle. So he said, oh, I'd love to bring my big camera in and the fancy lights and film it. So I got very excited about it, because I figured, hey, I can invite a group of the most vibrant, healthy people. And Eric was one of the people I invited. And we had 2 models, professional models there. We had a woman who's healing herself of breast cancer. We had a gentleman who's already healed himself of diabetes. And just everyone sparkled. You know, everyone had that wonderful glow. Couldn't get a better group. Spoke very intelligently. So they came, and I hosted it with my business partner, Mike Perrine. And basically, they were there for what, 2 or 3 hours filming. They even
3 hours.
Paid some for some food that from Caravan of Dreams restaurant here in New York City. And they really the producer was touched because he said, oh my God, each person gave their testimonial, they filmed each person, and we even were forthright to have them talk about their experience that was very positive, and that most of the people I invited were not long-time raw fooders. I wanted people who were fairly new within the last year, or if it was a little longer, that they would be able to speak in a way where they're transitioning. And they had a certain enthusiasm about their experience, but they're also going through these changes in their diet. So I wanted to be fair and ask them the question, do you obsess over your food? Because this was part of the whole premise of the show. And I think it is very normal that when you're making such a big change from a standard American diet to a raw foods diet, that you may obsess a little bit. So I really wanted the point to be given that people obsess about many things. Exercise. Hey, people obsess over their pork chops. You know, what am I going to eat tonight? There was such intelligent feedback that they got, and they walked away saying, well, we've got it. So in the end result, they just showed 2 very attractive women that were featured there, and instead of showing all the positive, they took just the snippet of negative, something negative they said. And they did not show 1 ounce of anything positive that was forthright. So I was very disappointed that they did that. So that was my experience.
Hi, I'm Eric Choka, co-founder of QUEST.TV, and I was very fortunate to be a guest on that taping. And I'm going to give you a little bit of the behind the scenes, what it was like. We're at QUEST.TV, we do a lot of shows, we do a lot of editing, so we can understand, you know, what you can do with information. One of the things that this whole experience made me think about was what's going on with journalism today. You take these corporations like ABC, NBC, they're huge corporations, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people trust what they say. So they trust that a show like 2020 is going to go out, get the facts, and bring it back to them for the betterment of society. But it seems like what they were doing with the information was not quite that. Was it journalism or sensationalism, is what I'm wondering. And it comes from my personal experience of being there. As Donna was saying, that she set up the discussion group. Producer came in, very polite, very welcoming. They did their thing. That there was a cameraman, and the cameraman just stopped on each person. They gave their experience, their ups and their downs, and and it was mostly ups. It was mostly how living a healthy lifestyle has changed their life for the positive, and how they got through any challenges that came up along the way, and how their health has changed over the whatever time it was. So likewise, I gave my side of it, and now out of 3 hours of potent stories, they used about less than half a minute. And what they cherry-picked out of all that great information was how this one person spent about 3 hours making her food that day, which I started to get an understanding of what they were doing on this show. They had a mission on this to produce this program, and what it was to get in sensationalist information, information which was not positive. Actually, it was negative. So,
well, the show was about an eating disorder. It was about orthorexia, and they wanted to portray that raw foodists, as Kevin said, will develop this. It's like an eating disorder, and that is not the case. That is not a true statement. It is not true that as a community that raw food and orthorexia is basically when one is obsessed with purifying themselves, if you watch the footage. So yes, it is true. We do want to purify ourselves, but when it becomes an eating disorder, or when it becomes so consuming in your life that you you're not engaging with your family, or that's all you can think about, or you're not eating enough because you're so worried about what you're putting in your body. This is certainly not the behavior that goes on in the raw food community. And also, Viktoras Kavinskis, they picked a good one because he has had a history of eating disorders, and so it was easy to point a finger at him and be so rude and cruel to him because he had a difficult life growing up in Russia, and he was considered, I guess, autistic. So he's an eccentric guy. He is slim. He is rather thin. So it was easy. And my speaking with Viktoras, not that I should speak for him, but just in speaking to him since the show aired, is that piece that they showed of him, where Stossel is speaking with him, they would keep asking him the same question again and again and again, and they were grilling him and interrogating him
until he said something.
He would say something that looked weak.
Yeah, that they could use it and twist it to whatever they wanted it to portray.
Yes.
And I was going to say that what dawned on me, thinking about what I wanted to say today, was I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll talk about how great it is, eating a vegan lifestyle, raw lifestyle. But then Kevin was saying, no, this show was not about that. This show was about disorders. And I was like, wait a second. All diets, inherent in the idea of a diet, is like a certain health consciousness. There's like certain desire in any diet, whether it's vegan, not vegan, this Atkins diet is all meat and cholesterol, whatever it is, there's a health consciousness behind it. And this show was supposed to be about obsessive disorders. But they picked one slim category of living, like the raw food lifestyle, and they said this is an easy target. So, and they just made an example out of it for some reason.
Well, I think agriculture, pharmaceutical companies, anything related that makes a lot of money, that are sponsors of ABC News, is not going to like a show that would feature the benefits of raw foodism and giving up your medications and getting healthy and healing your body, juicing every day. That's not, the sponsors aren't going to go for that. So I had actually, to my community, or our community, I had sent an email out saying, let's celebrate, because obviously the media or these companies are threatened, because more and more people in this country are getting interested in holistic, raw foods, getting healthy, acupuncture, and the more people are moving in that direction, and they're saying, no, I'm not going to do the meds, and no, I'm going to start eating fruits and vegetables, and I'm not going to eat cows anymore.
And like, let's say if they show people having eating disorders with fast food places like McDonald's and stuff for advertising on their station, they're going to have a conflict of interest.
Exactly. So it is a conflict for them. So they feel the need to attack, because this was not, it was biased, but it goes beyond that. This was an attack that was made on the raw foods community. It was an attack on Viktoras Kavinskis, and very unfairly portrayed. So we can at least know that they feel the need to attack. So actually it puts us in a better position, because whether the show aired or not, and whoever sees it, whoever's interested in getting healthy and living a healthy life, is still going to be attracted to this lifestyle, because the truth is in the philosophy of it, and you can't really deny that. So the people who are really interested and drawn to that are going to do it. And for all those people, because there were people like mothers of people who have gone on this lifestyle, those people who are more standard American diet people are saying, oh, I told you, I know that diet is not good. So, but it really, they feel that way, they're still going to feel that way.
Come on, Kevin, come back in.
Guys. All right, so
Here we are all together.
So here we are. We're here in the East Village, and we're doing our thing and putting out our word. I just want to say my last thing. If any of you think the major media are going to do a good job of this from now on, please wake up. Come watch us here at QUEST.TV. We put out the information. We put out the truth. We're not going to manipulate any of this information. So please join Donna, Eric, myself, Kevin Shuker here at QUEST.TV. We'll see you later, guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.